so many different ways to present it. It's almost overwhelming. That's the thing.
All right, I know a few of you have heard me read before, and you will probably agree that some of my writing could be interpreted as abstruse. So every once in a while I like to write something that more general populace might appreciate. And I'm on Goodreads. Is anybody here familiar with Goodreads?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on Goodreads, if you're a so-called Goodreads author, which is what I am because I advertise some of my own books on Goodreads, they ask you questions that are supposed to attract interest in your work from the other people on Goodreads. And one of the questions is, where did you get the idea for your most recent book? Now, I've always found that to be a completely ridiculous question. Where did you get the idea for whatever? To be a really ridiculous question. There's a bottle of Walt Whit beer. So I had fun answering that question. Here's a bottle of Kalashnikov vodka. Well, this isn't exactly about my most recent book, Tentatively an Interview in collaboration with Alan Davies, but it's the closest I can get at the moment. That age-old question of where did you get the idea can be answered by almost all creative people who are willing to be honest with a simple answer from a series of books called Ideas for Blanks, in this case, Ideas for Writers. I have one called Ideas for Filmmakers and one called Ideas for Musicians, too. They're all pretty much the same with a few minor variations. I should clarify, they're not exactly books. They're things that display on my iTab. They're kind of expensive, but the subscription's worth it because it keeps me ahead of the pack, so to speak, ahead of the wolves at my door. Unfortunately, I can't really afford to pay for a good iTab at the same time, so I can't always read the microprint. Anyway, just to give an example, I'm sitting here alone, as usual. My inflatable amanuensis doll that answered to the name of Samuel Beckett deflated a while back, and since then I haven't had any friends at all. So I'm trying to think, what can I write? I just look at the iTab Ideas for Writers, and I see that zombies are in right now, so I think, cool, that's something different that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. So I decide to make it a zombie story. Well, lest you think that I'm lazy and that I just sit back on my haunches and knock back a six-pack after such an inspired moment, I then consult the iTab again and see that if I really want to corner a niche market, I should make it targeted to an audience in search of their writer. So I decided to make it a queer youth novel, at least a little. Not too much because I want to keep it outside of the rating system so I don't have any problems there. Now I'm on a roll. A few more checks on the iTab and I've got the opening scene. 2 girls in a bedroom messing around, nothing too X-rated, just some exploratory kissing. Maybe a little petting, again, not too much. The annoying little brother has been pounding his pud in the next room. He can hear everything so he knows what's going on. Now, I don't explicitly say that's what he's been doing. It's implied, right? Ideas for Writers teaches you how to be subtle. So, he bursts into his sister's room, his pajama flies open, he's got the door knocker in his hand, the sister and her friend see that he's a zombie, so she blows his head off with a handy gun. Every American home should have at least one in every room. This is where I start to get really original. Usually zombies get killed when their head gets blown off, right? In this case, the brother keeps right on coming. He can't see anymore, but it's okay, it's a small room. The bed's on the right, the school desk's on the left, and the window's straight ahead. So it doesn't matter if he can't see anymore. I admit I started to get lost here. I mean, his door knocker wants to ring that bell, LOL, right? But I can't let that happen. I have got to curb that heat-seeking missile. Eureka! A vampire comes in the window at that very moment. I'm not making this shit up. It's all in the Ideas for Writers iTab. And starts sucking on the boy's neck stump. It's like winning the lottery for the vampire. In no time at all, the boy's body is drained till he's little more than one of those party whistles where you blow it and a tongue of rolled paper shoots out and then retracts again. You know what I mean? But he's still alive! Every time I start a sentence with but or use an ampersand or whatever, a red line appears under it. The Ideas for Writers spell check doesn't like it at all, but I can't help myself. I'm so excited. Nothing can kill this kid. The girls have been watching all this, admittedly fascinated and a little turned on. But then the vampire turns to look at them, and she's got a weird look in her eye, and they know what that means, so they each take a nail-studded baseball bat that's there in case they run out of ammo, and they each take a swing, but the vampire is too smart for that, and he jumps out the window just in time, and the bat hits the brother in what's left of his stomach instead, and here's the shocker, his head pops out of his neck. He was only fooling, he's okay, and everybody hugs each other, and we're back to being family friendly. I really don't know where to go from here. I'm even more stumped than the brother, get it? So I consult the wellspring and find that making it a dream justifies anything, so that gets me off the ratings hook a little. The sister wakes up, it turns out that she's fallen asleep in class, she's in school, and a nun has awoken her by whapping a ruler across her knuckles. I got that from the eye tattoo. Nice touch, eh? Just why the subscription's worth it. There's something weird about the nun. The reader doesn't know this yet, I just dropped some hints. But the nun's actually a guy in drag who's in school as an undercover cop, trying to catch some graffitiists who have been carving a post horn symbol in the ceilings. And the cop can't even figure out how they get up there. He's just got to know. But that's not the only weird thing. The girl's starting to figure out that he's actually a guy because there's this protuberance at about 3 feet in the front of the nun's habit. In other words, all is not as it seems. You don't want to make it too obvious for the reader. When the girl gets woken up, she knocks her eye tool on the ground, and when she leans over to pick it up in her Catholic school miniskirt uniform, her thong strap breaks, and her woo-ha is exposed to the nun, who just happens to be bending over at the same time to help her pick up the thingy, and wouldn't you know it, that nylon-wrapped protuberance slips right into the Garden of Eden. At this point, I'm a bit tipsy. And I look at my ideas for writers and see that I've accidentally opened the adult version, but there's no turning back now because I've lost track of where I am anyway. Well, the girl, the sister, right? Not the nun sister, but the zombie boy and the dream sister gets pretty excited by all this, and that's when, to quote Dr. John Money, she gets derailed from her love track. She's a goner. Nothing is ever going to turn her on like this again. She's going to spend the rest of her life trying to reinstantiate, but there's no hope for her. This was a one-of-a-kind experience, or so it seems. Fortunately for her, the undercover cop is actually her own age within a year or two. So the story's in the clear there, and the reason why this particular cop specializes in nun drag is not because he's one of the sisters of perpetual motion, or whatever they're called, but because he has a physical abnormality that makes his crotch 2 feet above the ground, and his heart at about 3 feet, while his head is still at about the normal height. Here's where the ideas for writers really gave me a kick. The protuberance, which everyone has been thinking is the member of the family who hangs onto the family jewels, is actually a stake that was driven through his unusual person's heart. The thing is, he can't take the stake out himself. That's against the rules, and he's too embarrassed to ask for help. Well, another red underline, the stake gets caught in the honeypot, and when the girl stands up, it pops out of his chest, and the wound immediately heals. Boy, is he grateful. I barely need to tell you what happens after that. The story just sort of writes itself. The boy is actually some sort of superpowered shapeshifter who is elongating when the stake was driven in by a bad guy who was trying, of course, to kill him. The result was that he didn't get killed, but he got stuck in this shape, right? And he's been an undercover cop in nun drag ever since. That's kind of harsh for such a young guy, even if he is precocious. That's made him more sensitive. Once the stake's out, he remembers that he's the graffitiist, and that his elongo powers have enabled him to carve into the ceiling with his titanium-hard fingernails. Everything fits together, he and the girl fall in love. His special powers make reinstantiation possible after all, and they live happily ever after. That's just the first chapter. I've been misleading the reader. The real hero of the story is the writer, but I'm too drunk now to read the ideas for writers anymore, so I have to stop for now. Does that answer your question? Thank you. get these things out of the way ASAP.
Did it really take all those bottles to write that story?
No. No, it took none of it, but if you were close enough to see what some of the brand names are of the booze, you might find it entertaining.
I like the performance aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be cool to film. Were you filming that?
Kalashnikov.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The Kalashnikov vodka is one of my prize booze bottles. I think I picked that up in Australia. I don't think it's sold in the United States. Or if it is, I've never seen it.